My name is Stephen Castillo, and this is my story. I was fairly young. My mom, my dad, and myself lived in Downey, California, in a small apartment there. I remember just waking up in the middle of the night. It was just me awake. I had looked towards the wall and remember seeing a hand, this hand being severed. It was smearing blood across the wall, almost in an arc kind of way, smearing it over and over again. I just buried my face into my parents who were sleeping, that I was sleeping in between. During that time, that was really the only thing that had happened in that location. As I got a little bit older, my family decided to move not too far away from the apartment. This new place was located right behind another home. It was a smaller building. This was during nighttime. I was enjoying my coloring book, sitting in the dining room while my mom was watching TV in the living room. The kitchen had this door that had a window in it, which was looking out towards our back room. It was closed. I looked up. A man was staring at me through the window. I jumped up and I had gotten out of my seat. My mom was frantic. What's going on? What's going on? What's happening? I said, the man. She looked and no one was there. No one had gone into the house. Everything was locked. It was a fairly small home, so there was really nowhere that anyone could have gone to. But when looking at this man, and as I got older and remembering, he had a black beard, dark hair, but his tone, even though he had those dark features, the colors still of him were of like a pale pastel colors. And if you've ever seen oil and water in a parking lot, it was like those colors. As time passed and my family decided, okay, we're going to move. That was the only instance in that house as well. We moved to a home in Whittier. My uncle, who was a sheriff at the time, had lived there with his family. Because he worked the night shifts a lot, the sun was really bright when setting. He decided it was a really good idea to tent the windows in the house. At any time of the day, it was dark. My parents would always have the lights on whenever we were there. As soon as you walk in the living room, and immediately to your right was this one room. This one room was a bedroom at one time. In that bedroom led a door to the hallway. Now this hallway was a very long hallway with one light in the middle. On the end was the bathroom. And on the other end of that hallway was two doorways, two bedrooms, and another doorway to the dining room. Imagine the house being dark already. This is the house that most of our problems started happening. That room that was immediately there used to be the bedrooms of my cousins. They would always complain about nightmares. They wouldn't be able to sleep in that room. My mom had mentioned when she was younger, and she too couldn't sleep in that room. It was a really bad feeling in there. My uncle thought it's a better idea if we just don't use it as a bedroom and create a bar room for gatherings of family and everything. As time went on, my family decided that maybe the bar room wasn't suitable. Let's make it into an office. We started noticing some weird things happening. It would get too cold in the house. We would be able to see our breath. We never thought it was weird. We thought that the insulation in the house might have been off. But the temperature just continued to remain cold. I didn't sleep in my own room, and I always slept in bed with my parents. One night, when my dad was home late from work, me and my mom were ready to sleep in the bed. Next thing I know, I wake up hearing my dad yelling with a gun in his hand running down that hallway. He had told us later on that someone had sat on the bed by him. And even though he was already in jail, he thought it had been Richard Ramirez, the person who would watch you sleep. He got up, turned the TV on, and had reached down for his gun and started yelling for us to call 911. He felt the bed get up and heard running down the hallway into what would have been the bar room or our office. He went over there. No one was there. It took a lot of convincing for him to think that anything else was happening in that house. A lot of the time, since he worked at night, it was just me and my mom in that house. One night in our room, we were watching TV. Like any family, we stored all the pots and pans under the oven of our house. So we're watching TV, and we hear all the pots and pans just come out of the cabinet. One of the lids make that spinning noise, and I look at my mom, and she looks at me, and she goes, "Come on, we gotta go clean it." We always kept the door to this room closed because that hallway was just way too dark. We would open the door and not even dare look straight down. So we go out, and I'm glued to my mom. I remember walking into the kitchen, and there not being a single pot on the floor. Immediately we look at each other and run back to the room. We decided to try to tell my dad, but he just said that maybe we were hearing things, even though he experienced his own thing. On another instance, me and my mom, again, in the room. We were asleep. I had a small dog. He used to sleep on the bed with us. We were woken up late at night. He was growling and fighting something under the bed. We didn't know what it was that was under the bed, what was going on. We were calling his name. Finally, he did come out. I remember him shaking and us picking him up. We were just screaming for him to get up from under there. We held on to the dog. Finally, morning came, and we decided to lift the bed to see what it was, thinking maybe something had gotten in. There was nothing under the bed, no blood, no nothing. To this day, we don't know exactly what it was that he was fighting under there, and why he came out so terrified. My parents had my sister. Then there was 3 of us in the house at night while my dad was at work. We would hear things here and there. It wasn't as much anymore, but we would still hear things in that office. You would hear what sounded like if someone were to actually open a beer bottle lid. It would clink. It would happen every night. We started using the office more. We would get on the computer, playing games or whatever. That was the coldest room in the house. When we did actually sit in there and use the computer, you always felt like someone was behind you. It was this immense feeling of hate, anger, and you would turn around and look behind you because you just felt them gleaming at you. Sometimes we would sit half sideways so that I was able to see behind me. That office was the most horrible room in that house. Being in there at any time of the day, whether morning, night, that feeling never went away. It just feels like something doesn't want you in there. My dad, him and my mom were in the living room one day. My sister's little shoe was on our fireplace mantle. They were just talking to each other. The shoe, instead of falling, flew across the room. Both my mom and dad looked at each other, and she goes, "You believe me now?" You would think this would prompt us enough to go ahead and pack up and leave, but we were still just dealing with whatever it was that was going on. The scariest moment I had was with my sister. My parents had left. They had gone to the store, and they were gonna come back soon. It was already at nighttime. My sister was playing by herself. I was watching TV, so I really wasn't paying attention to her. But something made me kind of tune in to her talking. I look over at her, and she's staring down the hallway, and she's saying, "I can't. No, I don't want to. I can't." I yell at her, and I go, "Amber, what are you doing? Who are you talking to?" She's still staring at the hallway, and she slowly turns, and she looks at me. She looks scared, and she goes, "It wants me to go with it." I couldn't even get up to grab her. I was so scared. I was only 8 at the time. I said, Amber, you need to come over here now. And she looked at the hallway again, as if trying to choose between me or whatever it was in the hallway. So I was like, if you don't get here, I'm going to hit you. Like, you need to come here now. Finally, she started running towards me. I went over and I closed the door really fast. I turned all the lights that I could in that living room. I told them they needed to come back as soon as they could. Even to this day, when I try to ask her, she says she doesn't remember what it was that she was talking to in the hallway. That made me firmly believe that something there did not like us, that really meant harm to us. One night, or I should say day really, because it was still always so dark in that house, my dad was in the kitchen cooking and I was with him. My mom decided to go to sleep in the room. We heard this shriek, just this scream, like blood curdling. It was my mom. She was calling my dad, Lou, get in here, someone's in the room, get in here. He grabbed whatever he had in his hand and he burst into that room. No one was in there. My mom said someone was staring down at her and that it was darker than how dark that room was. When she woke up, it was this immense fear. She knew that it wasn't something good. Whatever it was there, and it didn't leave even when the light turned on. It wasn't until my dad stepped into the room, since he put his hand in first to turn on the light, that it went away. There was this time that me and my mom had come home. It was just me and her. It was late at night. We had just opened the door, gotten inside. My mom had just closed the front door. The door started shaking, like if someone was trying to get in. And my mom turned around and she thought it was her brother. She was yelling out, Jimmy, is that you? But the door kept trying to open and push. She was screaming and she moved the couch in front of the door, called the cops, and they were fast. They were there really fast. No one had been there. I believe that was something else that wanted to come in. Another instance that I remember, in my room that I had never slept in, I started sleeping in now. I was a little bit older, thinking, I got this, I can handle this. There was this closet that was pretty big, and all my toys were inside of there. Every day, 3:30, a toy went off. The noise was like, I don't know how to just like a... This is like now the 5th day that we've heard this. Let's clear out the toys from the closet. Let's try to find what that toy is, because something was wrong. We didn't think really anything more than that. But even past that, every day at 3 to 3:30, that sound would come on. The more that I spent in that room, I started noticing that problem just was everywhere throughout the house. When I was in there alone too, I remember hearing these scratches outside my window. It was just nails on stucco, just that crunching all the way through. I ran out of my room. Later on, my mom had become pregnant with my other sister. We decided that it was time to move out of the home. My family didn't move too far because they moved 1 street behind that house. This new house, it was completely different. Like fresh air, there was sun, peace. We thought, okay, this is going to be our home. We moved in. We're still moving stuff over back from the old house to the new house. My mom is in her room at the old house. She's packing up. One of the windows that was closed, we had curtains hanging from it, even though it was completely just sealed off. My mom was folding her stuff and putting her boxes in. She remembers looking over at that window and the curtains blew up. She grabbed her stuff and said, that's it, we're done with this, and walked out. We finally moved into that new house, free from whatever it was from the other house. Finally felt at peace. My family seemed a little bit more together than when we lived in the other house. But not all good things last forever. That darkness came back. I was already older too, and in my own room, I'd be in there. I'd hear sobbing. My mom crying. I would open the door and go, "Ma, what's wrong?" But she'd be asleep. Okay, I'm hearing things, right? I would hear it again. I'd close the door, go back to what I was doing, and hear it again. I'd open the door and there'd be nothing. Then I started hearing my name. I would start hearing my mom call my name. I would come out and go, "What happened, Ma?" "Nothing." She'd tell me, "You just called me." "No, I didn't call you." I'd just go back into my room. My youngest sister at the time, she was playing in the house. She had looked in the kitchen and started screaming. She said there was something with red eyes in the kitchen. It was almost like the same thing happening again, but now in this new house. We started taking photos of the kitchen to see. That night that she had told us that we took a photo, we saw this orb in the photo. For the longest, we just decided to keep the kitchen door closed. My middle sister, the one that was first talking in the hallway, thought it was a fun idea to leave her phone recording with my youngest sister who was playing by herself. In the background, you can hear my youngest sister playing. Then you start hearing other voices. It was just a mix of static and voices. Then one of the most disturbing things I remember hearing was like little trolls or little just whispering amongst themselves. We thought she was playing with something, but you can hear her with her toys. We couldn't really make out what it is that these people were saying. People talking on the side and these little gremlin things talking as well. We tried our best to keep listening and hearing it, but that recording had disappeared completely. We started realizing when we would tell these stories, things would happen. We feel like maybe they don't want us to tell these stories. My sister told me one time she was telling her friends about this in her friend's apartment, and that a bottle flew across the room, causing her friends to leave her all alone in that house. And even now, as I'm telling this story, I already know that possibly something is going to happen. Even now in this house, it's gotten just a little bit worse. My sister was asleep. She heard again crying like I did. She thought it was my youngest sister, and she said, "Sammy, what's wrong?" But not actually turning around. The crying kept happening, and she goes, "What happened, Sammy?" She felt a hand on her arm. She turned around and no one was there. My sister was already asleep. Something similar happened with my mom. She heard crying as well, and then she heard, "Mom." The same thing. She goes, "What? Sammy, what?" But still keeping her eyes closed. She heard, "Mom." Finally she goes, "What?" And she looked and no one was there. We believe whatever it is that followed us has been causing some issues for us. My sister says that even in her room, as she's in there, things will just fly across. We've gotten to the point where we're just like, we don't want to deal with it right now. It seems like no matter where we go, the problem's going to follow. We just wait and see what the next thing is. That's where we're at right now.